so excited to be able to introduce today's guest, Stephanie Hsu. Hi there.
Hi, Lily. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. First of all, happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Woo-hoo!
What does this theme, when you hear the words emerging undivided, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, the imagery that comes to mind for that is like it feels like a big bloom, and it's like, you know how like pea tendrils, they have these little vines that sort of like grab onto other vines. It feels like a big bloom with our arms linked and connected. And I think that is what makes us the strongest, is when we are able to support one another and be like unshakable in our strength to one another. Yeah, I remember in maybe like third or fourth grade, I was asked to do a lemonade ad for the student body. But basically, that meant that like I was chosen to read off of a piece of cardboard, like, buy this lemonade for 50 cents. And it was a practice in public speaking. But it was a form of acting in a way. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that was really fun. And I think I'm kind of good at it, but I should probably think of something more practical to do with my life. Like truly at a very young age, I just immediately was like, oh, that's not going to be possible for me. When I was coming up, when I was in high school, there really weren't a lot of people who look like us. And so it just was, I call it like a series of guardian angels who kept opening doors for me that I didn't even know existed, whether it was a classmate being like, you should audition for drama class, or an upperclassman who was like, you should think about going to college for this. And I never even knew that those were options. I'm so grateful that it has brought me to this moment that I'm in right now, so that I might open doors for other people. I never had very high expectations for myself in terms of making it as a commercial actor, because I just was like, that's so off the table for me. So all I can focus on is making things with people that I really love. I mean, even when I was studying at Tisch, there was like, I was one of maybe 5 people of color in the student body for the acting departments.
So
And
not
at
even Asian, but just like full
No.
stop.
Yeah. And at the time, like that was really normal, which is so crazy because that statistic now is so shameful. But at the time, like I just felt lucky that I was one of the people who got a seat at the table. And I early on became really involved in the experimental theater world. So like downtown, off Broadway, because it was a very international crowd. There were people from all over the world coming to like do a clown show or like do a puppet show in New York City. And it was a lot of really radical work. And I really thought that that was going to be my path. What I wanted to do was to make things that challenged me. And I didn't see that available for me in the commercial space. But then again, with the Guardian Angels, like through a series of a lot of happenstance, I ended up on Broadway and TV and sort of started entering those spaces with a lot of people who were just excited to support me. And I feel like I got to do it my own way. You know, I really do feel like even up until Everything Everywhere was just bushwhacking. Maybe not even like trying to get anywhere, just taking one step in front of the other and following the people who felt like kin.
I read that you worked on a farm while you were at Tisch.
Pea tendrils.
Oh, I know.
Tendrils and pickles.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was a freshman in college, I remember 2 of my roommates, we all heard about this thing called woofing, willing workers on organic farms. Basically, you become a volunteer on a farm and you learn farming practices. And I had the good fortune of working on a really small permaculture farm, really focused on regenerative agriculture, regenerating soil, and like beyond organic farming practices. Like it is such a passion. There's so much about it that feels really artistic, actually, and very much like what I hope to do as an artist, which is a form of feeding people, nourishing people, giving, right? The act of offering. And I remember we always had something to give. Like even though they had no money, that anytime someone came to visit, like we always had a head of cabbage or fresh tomatoes to give, because the way that they were taking care of the land was so dedicated that there was just abundance. And I remember I was like, oh, that's it. You know, like that form of abundance is how I want to live my life, right? That is that if you give something enough care, that you always have something to give.
Okay. Now I wish I had a pen to like jot all these like pearls of wisdom down. So moving beyond college, let's get back to kind of your years in experimental theater. I've heard you played like inanimate objects, like that was your jam.
I guess I was just typecast, you know? It was like, let's just make her a thing.
A computer, which is awesome.
At a computer on Broadway, actually. So that was like, it was from downtown to inanimate downtown to uptown.
Oh
I
yes.
mean, I did comedy with Bowen in college, Bowen Yang. And I was in the sketch group, he was in the improv group. And even in comedy, like I was always playing characters named Flarge or like just like random
You
random
were a
things.
rock? Were you a rock at some point?
I did play a rock, but I don't remember when it was. Well, I played a rock in Everything Everywhere, but I played a rock some at another moment. I also played a hand.
Oh, okay. Just that's it. A
A
floating
hand.
Stephanie hand.
If I like really look back at some of the roles I've played, they all actually feel very connected to just this very fundamental desire to just make things with people that feel like artistic soulmates. And I don't know, I just think I had a really beautiful support system in New York and had really been pounding the pavement for a long time. And so by the time, by the time Maisel came about, everybody in town was like, there's this role coming up and we think it should be for you and you have to get in there. And I was like, I'm at the theater 8 shows a week. I'm in tech right now, which means I don't leave the theater. I don't know when I would shoot a TV show. And all of them were like, they'll make it work. They'll make it work. So that year was really transformative. Because I was doing 8 shows a week, playing a female lead in this new musical, and then on Monday nights or Mondays, I would film for Mrs. Maisel. And I think that was the year that I finally kind of admitted to myself, like, oh, this is literally what I do for work. I mean, this job, this passion of mine has brought me so much abundance. I think before then I had always felt this imposter syndrome of like, kept sneaking in through the back door. I mean, even how I talk about it now, I'm like, I got onto Broadway by accident, or everything happened by accident. But I think that year in 2019 was really the year that I was like, okay, like I have put in the hours and it's mirroring back. And my task is to stand in my light as opposed to continually like shirk it.
Happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a love story. Like, I mean, Nora, also known as Aquafina, Nora and I go way back too, because we were both on this show called Girl Code on MTV. She was one of the people who would it was a bunch of comedians who would talk about female issues. And so she was one of the comedians who would like talk about this stuff. And then I was one of the reenactors. There was like an ensemble of 5 or 6, and we would just reenact funny things. And a lot of comedians came out of that. That was kind of Nora's first pop as a comedian outside of being a rapper. So Nora and I know each other from way back. Bowen and I, this was, Bowen had not been on SNL yet. He was writing, but was not, the star that he is now. And yeah, they were doing this show on Comedy Central, and I was like, I want to come play, like, sign me up. And Mrs. Maisel rapped, Be More Chill rapped. About a month later, I was like, I want to do a funny episode. They signed me up. They cast me in this very random one-off episode. I played a character named Shushu, but spelled Shushu. Really random. Super, super random. And Harry Shum Jr. is in that episode. Simu Liu, right when he found out he was going to be Shang-Chi, but before he was known as Shang-Chi, is in that episode. Jamie Chung. It's an incredible, strange, funny one-off episode. One of the best episodes, in my opinion, of television, and directed by the Daniels. So that's how I met the Daniels. And I followed them out to LA after we worked together because we just had so much fun. And a week and a half later of me getting to LA, they called me and they were like, hey, we're working on this movie, no pressure, but we think you're perfect for it. So yeah, it's all very nuts, but I definitely have Bowen a lot to thank for that. But it also is like this beautiful, spiral of friendship. It's like the best thing about climbing or just being more, just going deeper into this industry is seeing friends along the way. Like there's just something so comforting about that. And I couldn't be more excited, proud of him, grateful for him, just happy to have him along with me in the ride. When we were growing up, it's like it really was, we were fed the mentality that there's one seat at the table. And if you are lucky enough to be the only, then you just have to like sit tight and make the most of it. And I've really been thinking about this proverbial table recently and just being like, I like flip the table. Also sit on the floor, and like it's just that is such an illusion that there's only space for one of us. And I think that collectively as a community, we're really leaning into that. And it feels so important that we support one another in every single way at every stage along the way, because truly the only way for us to be able to make more space is if we galvanize together, right? And it's just so important. We have so much healing still that we need to do. I mean, like it's been such an exciting year and an exciting few years, but I do think that there's still so much that we're dealing with that we've internalized
Yes.
as Asian Americans, raised in a country where, what we're internalizing was fed to us, was taught to us. A lot of the narratives we're still trying to purge. What was so wild about last year and the journey with Everything Everywhere is, to so many people, it was like, who is this girl? She came out of nowhere. And like, meanwhile, I'm like, I've been over here playing a hand for years. You know what I mean? I felt a lot of auspicious energy around me. And like, our original wrap date was March 13th, 2020. That happened to be the day that everything shut down because of COVID. So we got so lucky that we got to finish principal photography, like insane. But, then we sat on it for 2 years, or like Paul Rogers, our editor, was editing away for 2 years, or a year and a half. So much had changed since when we made it to when it was released. And it was such a cathartic, just so cathartic to even get to finally share it. And I knew at the time that it was really a special film. Like when we were making it, I remember saying to Dan Kwan, like, I think this movie is going to bring people back to movie theaters. And I had no idea about the film industry at all, but I just knew that it was special. I still can't really quite wrap my head around it, to be honest. And I feel really grateful because the movie, it does feel like such an honest representation of what I dream of for art in the world. And not every project can be like that, but personally for me, as a introduction to the film industry, it just felt like such an honest, like, this is what I'm about, this is what I value, this is how weird I can get, and this is how big-hearted the projects I want to be a part of feel like. A lot of that was intentional, right? In terms of just calling upon the art gods and art spirits and channeling a character that was not only a daughter, a broken daughter, but also like a sort of queen of nihilism. That to me was such a spiritual experience to get to tap into that role. And it is very affirming that it works, right? That people are still capable of being surprised. People are desiring healing, artistic challenge. And I do feel like, with the Oscars, which is still kind of crazy, I think for so long, Michelle was, there were so many firsts, right? And I do think that something changed that night, where I've been saying that I feel like the Asian community has officially been sewn into the quilt of cinema history for so long. We just have never seen it before. Like Michelle, depending on how you're counting, Michelle is the first or second Asian female nominated for Best Lead Actress, and she's the second she's the first one who won. You know, it's like in 95 years. So anything that you may feel about you feeling like there's no space for you is not true, but it also is statistically real, right? Like there is space for us and we deserve everything and more. And also statistically, we're still at that percentile. I do think history was made and I feel really lucky to be a part of it. And I know that there's still so much more room to go. And even last year was a journey of kicking down doors as we were going. And I'm excited to continue to make space, you know, because now we know that it's possible. We did that. It wasn't just like a fluke, right? That was a group of people who made that happen. So it has to happen again. I think that this relates to the Simulu being Asian as a superpower, and also the importance of like this learning of how to stand in your light and move past the imposter syndrome, is that it is such a hindrance when we like hide ourselves, or it is such a hindrance when we keep ourselves from greatness, right? And I do feel like the beautiful thing about making art or putting yourself out there in any way is it can be very healing to understand that you're not alone either. And I do think that I also felt so healed by the fact that we weren't, when we made the movie, we were not like talking about intergenerational trauma. We were just like, this is what we have. We're just going to do it. You know, like we weren't talking about a lot of the things that have now been talking points about the film. And since the movie has come out, I feel like I have learned that my experience is not alone. Because when I read the character of Joy, I was like, I know this character. And Jobu too. I was like, I know these, like the DNA of these characters very deeply. And to hear so many people in the world, Asian or not, to be like, oh, I see that. I know that kind of relationship or mother-daughter relationship. That's been really astounding because I didn't know that so many people knew that so deeply. I do think that, you know, in terms of what's culturally baked into us, I've been reflecting on this, and I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I do think some of it comes from our parents, our grandparents, uh, adopting models of safety, of how to be safe, right? Like if you're not seen, then no one will hurt you, or like no one will say mean things to you. And so it was a way of assimilating that was like to keep each other safe. And so I think that that's important to name, because maybe that's why the threshold specifically for our community to stand in our light feels so deeply uncomfortable, is because like it also comes from a place of self-protection and cultural protection. And yeah, it is risky. It feels very vulnerable. And I'm excited for our communities to support one another further so that we may feel safe to be bright. You know, a lot of people have been asking me how it feels to make movies or make shows with predominantly Asian people. And I was like, that never was necessarily my intention. I think it's just that there has been such a shortage of our stories. And if I'm not telling stories that are close to home, then I often don't get to be a part of a family. I don't get to play a daughter. I more likely am playing a best friend, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that like the positive spin on that is that I think there's so much more space for us to tell our stories, and no one else is going to tell it for us, right?
Yeah.
That's not even about like identity. That's just about the act of sharing, right? And like if someone else is coming from a whole different set of experiences, they're not going to be able to write nuanced ones that are close to your experiences. That's the whole, I mean, it's like the month versus 365 thing is I think the goal is 365, and the goal is to, you know, really that it doesn't become such a, I don't know, that we don't like re-emphasize our differences, but actually we can get to a place where our identities are woven into the stories and not the like talking point. Even for the movie Joyride that's coming out, we've been saying, you know, it's funny first, Asian second. I hope that I may continue to grow into someone who's like a holder of space, who is actually, someone asked me this and it does feel full circle. Like what is the gift that you're meant to give to people? And I do feel like I want to be known for feeding people. The people are hungry, feed them, is something that I once heard. And nourish people. Yeah, pea tendrils, farming, art, right? Like we're just so malnourished in so many different ways in our daily existences. And everything I do, I hope it is something that can bring nourishment.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being our guest today and just being so vulnerable and heartfelt. And I feel like a lot of us here, and I know everyone on the live stream, I can confidently say, have taken away some inspiring lessons from you. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. Wait, is it possible? Can I see everyone really fast?
Oh, I don't know.
Is that a thing?
Our production crew, is that possible? It might not be a thing. Oh, we're getting the no. We're getting the no. But just know there's people out there, and you're sending that. Stephanie's sending us all the mind control.
Yeah.
Not a good texter, but she's sending her love, right?
I'm sending my love. It's my love mind puke is my superpower.
Mind
love puke.